Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Inside the Naval Postgraduate School, the nation's premier national security research university. I'm your host, Alan Richmond. Thanks for joining us. Our first segment gives us an opportunity to visit with the president of the Naval Postgraduate School, Daniel T. Oliver, along with Admiral Jerry Ellis, who is the chair of the Committee on the Future. President Oliver and Admiral Ellis, thank you both very much for taking time to talk with us. I'd like to find out a little bit more about what is the Committee on the Future.
Well, I'm waiting to find out. Let me tell you where it came from, and that'll give you some idea of what we're trying to do, and maybe that'll help answer the question. Some months ago, somebody asked me, what are we going to do after the centennial, which of course, as you know, was a year-long celebration. And I started thinking about, well, what are we going to do? And one of the things I realized was that we would be coming up about right now to the third year of our 5-year strategic plan, which means about a year from now, we'll have to start addressing what are we going to do for the follow-on, whether we revise the one we have, stick with the one we have, rewrite something completely different. And so while I was sort of mulling those over, I happened to be at a conference where one of my colleagues, the president of one of the Cal State campuses, said that he had established a committee on the future. And without even asking him what it was, the name sort of stuck in my mind, and I said, this sounds like something that we might be able to do in order to ask the questions that we need to ask in order to try to get some answers to inform us as we address our follow-on strategic plan. And so the form that it takes and how it comes out and exactly the structure and all of that, you know, I'd defer to my chairman. Admiral Ellis was good enough to agree to chair our Committee on the Future, and so I'm really anxious to see what it was, and I'm very hopeful that it will give us some real clear direction for a way ahead in the future of the school.
Admiral Ellis, can you tell us what role you'll play in the Committee on the Future?
I'm very honored to have been asked by President Oliver to be the chair. I look at it as, you know, most good organizations that are productive, efficient, effective and everything operate off a strategic plan, something they've really thought through on what they're going to do in the future. And I see this Committee on the Future as a very important part of that. I think what my overall job will be is to take this committee and really try to look at the future in all regards in how we can make the Naval Postgraduate School a much more productive, effective, efficient organization. This is a really rapid changing world. I mean, who could have envisioned what we see today just 10 years ago? From the internet to what is going on in the cyber world to social media, you name it. Naval Postgraduate School has to keep up with that change, and it has to predict ahead what the future may be if we expect to be able to support the students and our customer, which is primarily, you know, the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy. So I see that the committee itself coming up with a report that sort of sets the scene, that sort of what's the environment now and for the future in all regards. I mean, looking at research. Where is research going? Where do we need to be concentrating our research? What are the demographics of our students? How is that changing? What are the new interests of the Department of Defense, in particular the Department of the Navy? I mean, you look at the interests that have popped up here in the last 2 or 3 years. Energy, unmanned vehicles, cybersecurity, information warfare, things that we weren't really concentrating on that much. What are the other areas that may pop up in the future? We need to be prepared for that. And we need to be thinking it through and then preparing our curriculums and so forth to support it. So I think, you know, there's a tremendous number of areas we're going to try to get into, but it's trying to set the scene. So we can take this report, pass it over to the Strategic Planning Committee, and to give them something as a foundation so they can develop a good strategic plan.
Will our Committee on the Future differ from others given the fact that we're DoD focused?
Well, yes and no. I mean, they'll be looking at the same future, more or less. And the fact of the matter is national security policies are becoming so broad because the threats to our national security these days are now defined in ways that we never defined them before. The effects of globalization, global economics, think natural disasters, international terrorism. So many things now become part of national security. So in many ways, the future they will be looking at will be the future we will be looking at. But having said that, NPS is a unique institution. We are entirely demand-driven. We are a service provider to the Navy first, but also to DOD, the federal government, and to folks in the national security arena at large. I mean, the entire national security arena, increasingly globally. And so looking at things, you know, some of the things that we will look at that will be the same will be like pedagogy. You know, where are teaching methods, techniques, technologies of the future going? Those will be similar. But with our focus for the NPS, it'll always be the same, and that is to provide unique, relevant education, advanced education and research for future leaders in our national security arena.
Who else will be on the committee?
Oh yes, we've already invited a very distinguished group of people to come serve, and they've all accepted. We have people from academia outside of Naval Postgraduate School, but also from leadership here at Naval Postgraduate School. We have people from industry. We have people from other research institutions. We have people from the Department of Defense. We have a senior executive serving in the Secretary of the Navy's office. All these people to me are a really wonderful group that I'm looking forward to working with. Because some of them I have worked with before, and I know the kind of product that they can do and the kind of effort they will put out. So I'm very excited about moving forward with this committee.
Can you elaborate a little bit and tell us what the goals of the committee will be?
What we've done so far is I've put together a working committee here at Naval Postgraduate School, and these are some staff members primarily led by Christine Haska, the Vice President for Informational Resources. And we have been working together now. We've met probably 5 or 6 times. We've developed we've sort of come up with categories of things we want to explore and look into, whether it be research, whether it be faculty, whether it will be demographics, whether it be funding, whether it be other subjects. And then we did a lot of brainstorming in each of those areas to come up with the specific things we wanted to look at. We've now identified those. We have taken our committee, made assignments at who is the lead person for each of those areas, and assigned at least 2 other people to work with that person. We're having our first formal meeting coming up here on the 11th of August here at the Naval Postgraduate School, which we will kick everything off. And the President has given me a year to produce this report. We're going to start that in August. That's where the year starts, but we hope to do it earlier. But I'm looking forward to it. We've laid out a timeline about our meetings and when we're going to get together and so forth. And we'll make our first formal report to the Board of Advisors for NPS at their October meeting in Washington, D.C.
Well, President Oliver, Admiral Ellis, thank you very much, and good luck with the Committee on the Future. Each year, the Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation, or SMART Scholarship for Service program, receives thousands of applications from students attending universities around the country. These individuals demonstrate keen interest in working for the Department of Defense in science and engineering fields. The few who receive the scholarship award are truly exceptional. SMART offers full scholarships to civilian undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students pursuing degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines. This program aims to increase the number of civilian scientists and engineers working at Department of Defense laboratories. The incoming 2010 SMART cohort, comprised of 297 outstanding students, gathered recently in Monterey, California, as part of the annual SMART orientation. The orientation brings together recipients of these scholarships in order to familiarize the new scholars with the depth and breadth of the program and provide hands-on exhibits featuring the latest research opportunities. The orientation featured representatives from almost 60 Department of Defense facilities. Another highlight of the 5-day event was the opportunity to tour and interact with the crew of the USS Mobile Bay. So, Captain, tell us a little bit about the USS Mobile Bay. What kind of a ship is she?
Mobile Bay is a Ticonderoga class cruiser, one of the Aegis ships, essentially one of the most technologically advanced warships in the entire world. Our primary mission areas are air warfare against aircraft, surface warfare, which would involve surface ships, and anti-submarine warfare, which is, I think, obvious against submarines, and then strike warfare against land targets with the Tomahawk missile system.
How old a ship is she, and where are you based?
Mobile Bay was commissioned in February of 1987, so 23 years old, and we're home ported out of San Diego, California.
Now we have a big program and reception going on for a few days here in Monterey Bay for the SMART program, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But you're here as part of that effort for getting young people interested in the Navy, mostly.
We are, and I view this as a tremendous opportunity to show all of those people the ship, the end product essentially of what they will be doing as a result of being in the SMART program, going into Navy labs, doing research, and I think it's important for them to see what the end product looks like, what the, one of the top line ships looks like, and it might spark ideas for them in the future, and they'll also realize when they're doing this research and engineering that they'll realize that the people that run the ship have to be able to do it, and I think it might add to their capability of making good, viable systems that we can use in the future to face the challenges that are out there.
One of the things that we're always impressed with when we come aboard any of the Navy ships is the caliber of the young officers and enlisted personnel, both male and female, that you have. How big is your crew? Tell us a little bit about the makeup of the Mobile Bay.
Well, we have about 320 people. About 35 of those are officers. The rest are enlisted. And we have an absolutely tremendous crew. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm the commanding officer, but I am extremely proud of this crew. It's a very diverse crew, and I think that's one of the things that makes us great, using the diversity of backgrounds and where people came from to expand our ability to think and innovate and perform well. We have about 50 women aboard in the crew, and then we have people from all over the world, all over the country, and citizens of other nations actually as members of the crew. So it's pretty exciting to have that kind of a workforce that is so dedicated and so good at what they do.
Now, you're based in San Diego, you're here in Monterey Bay today, you leave tomorrow. I know sometimes you can't talk about where you're going, but are you all over the world, or are there certain regions that this ship travels?
Well, right now we're kind of in a unique portion of the ship's life. We just came out of a 10-month modernization period where we did an extensive rework of the combat systems of the ship, as well as some strengthening modifications to make the ship last longer and be viable into the future. The ship was designed essentially in the 1970s, early 1980s, and with an incredible design that was the top thing that you had in the world. The world has changed since then. Systems are not driven so much by military specifications and military design as they are by writing off of commercial designs and making them militarized. So we've leveraged that to take the advances in technology and the pace of technology, turn that into our advantage on the ship, and be able to use our weapon systems and modify our weapon systems and the algorithms that go into controlling those against future threats for a long time into the future.
That's great. Now, you're here for a brief stay, but will you get to take a little shore leave, and will the sailors be able to go into Monterey and enjoy some of the beauty we have?
We are here for a very brief stay, unfortunately, but you know, when we get back underway, there will be more things to do in the testing phase for all of those things I talked about in our modernization. But during these 2 days, I think we're going to take as much advantage of that as possible. The crew will be out there. I will definitely be out there, and we really look forward to being in Monterey. Monterey is a very historic place. and a very famous place. You read about Monterey, and a lot of people haven't been here, so it'll be very nice to get out there. I think a lot of people will be going to the aquarium, seeing the marine sanctuary, and of course all of the other things in this great town.
Well, on behalf of the Naval Postgraduate School, you're welcome back anytime, and it's always good to have you here, so we're proud to see the mobile bay and on the Monterey Bay.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, take care. We also had the opportunity to visit with the executive officer of the USS Mobile Bay, Commander Joey Franson, who just happens to be an NPS alumnus.
1999 to 2001, I was at NPS and I studied computer science. Well, Monterey is one of those great hidden gems of California. I absolutely had a great time. The school was wonderful. It is a great place. As a military officer, a lot of times you're worried about your job. You're at sea, it's very busy. And NPS and the whole postgraduate program allows you to take time and actually study and start relearning things and working on an advanced degree. And then the area here is just wonderful. It's very beautiful, very scenic, and I think it really supports or is conducive to the studies here. And the faculty is great. They have a lot of great interaction, both with those military instructors that come in and bring a lot from the fleet, as well as those instructors that are installed here, the civilians that have been here and working on the different research projects for the DoD and stuff. And I think the other piece that Naval Postgraduate School offers that is very wonderful is the foreign exchange program, where the different folks from different navies are side by side with you, learning both not just about whatever your field of study is, but about each other. And I think that's a great benefit to the Navy and the community.
We'll have more from Inside NPS from Monterey, California, right after this. One of the many institutes at the Naval Postgraduate School is the MOVES Institute. It stands for Modeling, Virtual, Environments, and Simulation. We also had the opportunity to talk to one of the big supporters of the MOVES Institute, Professor Simon Bradley.
NPS's unique nature of its students is its secret sauce. The fact that the students have a real desire to fix problems that they face every day. They're a different type of student to a student that is young, aspiring to go out in the world and to achieve things. These guys have already achieved things. They have real world problems that they come here to try and solve. It's understandable that the faculty see them as partners because, in effect, they're all working on research programs together. We've already identified the MOVES Institute for its excellence in modelling and simulation. We are discussing potential issues of cybersecurity with the institute here that deals with that. We have system engineering capabilities here that we're already working with NPS on now, so we've extended that. And we're also looking at how we can broaden our outreach into this part of the world.
While at the MOVES Institute, we also had the opportunity to talk with one of our research professors about her project.
This particular project is 3D virtual humans, and it's part of a little bit larger project that we do with UNC Chapel Hill. So colleagues at UNC are masters at display technologies. So what we are proposing to give up of flat displays and go for organic, non-flat displays to achieve better, higher reality. In this particular case, we would like to go from virtual humans projected on flat walls to humans that are projected on human-like molds that we would like to interact and be used as role players, perhaps in some urban warfare type of environment. But you can also imagine all kind of telemedicine applications where a doctor needs to see a reaction of a human patient who may be remotely somewhere, but again, a prop can be next to the doctor. Virtual Cent Table is a brainchild of colleagues from UNC, and Delta 3D, part of work from NPS, is powering a visualization there. So what we present there is your next generation Cent Table on steroids. So not only that you'll have physical props but we combine physical props that everyone likes and they are very useful and needed with textures, with dynamic elements that you don't have in a regular center table. So it's a kind of marriage of analog world and digital world, taking the best from both worlds and empowering small units in their planning mission type of scenarios.
We'll be back with more of Inside NPS right after this break. Well, when you think about technology and the internet, the name Robert Kahn comes to mind. And recently we had the opportunity to visit with this great pioneer. Well, Dr. Kahn, thank you very much for being with us on Inside NPS. I'm wondering if you can tell us what first got you interested in the internet.
I started out, as you well know, my career at Bell Labs, and then I was on the MIT faculty for a while. And when I left to get some practical experience, I got involved in designing and working with teams that were actually building real networks. So we built the very first computer network called the ARPANET. And then I got hired by DARPA, which was funding all of this, and ended up eventually running that whole research office. While I was there, I actually designed a network called a packet radio net, a forerunner of today's CDMA technology, which is pretty much spread around the world. And also formulated a program. I was not the chief designer of it. In fact, Irwin Jacobs of Qualcomm was really the chief designer of a network that was a satellite network that could take packets up and broadcast them down, and the ground stations could look at who it was for and pick and choose and forward them on. So it's kind of an Ethernet in the sky using Intelsat 4. So it was sort of a very natural thing to ask. These are very different nets, different data rates, different interfaces, different packet sizes, different properties. How could they interoperate? And how could we get computers on these different machines, different systems, to interoperate without the users having to know the various details about how to route and so forth? So that really was the genesis of the internet notion. I started the program at DARPA back in 1973. I teamed with a fellow named Vint Cerf to actually do the detailed design, and then led contracts with Stanford, BBNN, and UCL to actually do the implementation. So we were international from day one, and the rest just sort of evolved over time.
Well, you've made so many contributions and have received so many awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Of course, that's not why we did the work. I mean, it was just an interesting research project, but it turned out that it had some real practical utility, and people eventually saw the benefit of it, and it really has propagated worldwide.
In your wildest imagination, did you ever really think about what the internet would become?
You know, back in those days, it really was just, it was fun as a research project. We were all motivated by the scientific challenge. You could ask the same question of lots of other technical achievements, and some of them have led to real societal impact, and some perhaps they're still out in the future.
Well, here we are in the year 2010, and I'm just wondering, what is your definition of the internet today?
You know, the internet to me is a system that allows a lot of different components to all work together. So it was designed as a set of protocols and procedures to link disparate networks and to let the computers on those networks, which are all of different kinds, talk to each other. The internet protocols as we developed them really were agnostic to the choice of network. The whole idea was networks would come and networks would go. New capabilities would be developed over time, and that these protocols would allow whatever they are to all be interoperable. Today people confuse the components of the internet with the protocols that we developed to allow them all to work together. So to me, they're very distinct kinds of things. So when people are concerned about how the internet is working, to me that means they're concerned about the protocols and not the performance of any one given network, device, or even internet service provider.
I'm wondering how you would classify yourself. Are you a scientist or are you an inventor?
I guess if I had to pick a term, I would say I'm more of a system architect and system developer. I mean, I started my career out as a mathematician, so That's an intrinsic love I have of being able to analyze things and formulate them in a very structured way. But something like the first computer network or the internet is not really yet amenable to that kind of rigorous mathematical scrutiny. And so you end up essentially having to build models of what's going on in the system in your mind. You know, all the interactions. I mean, I sort of close my eyes and visualize all those myriad details. Most people who use the internet have no idea what's going on inside. They just know that they're typing on their keyboard and interacting with some remote system perhaps, or sending email, but they don't really see what's going on internally. And I sort of could see that all in my head. Maybe we can eventually get that down to more of a science, but we're not really there right now. I must admit I spend some of my time constantly thinking about how you could formalize that in some way, but it's more of a background task. I would say close to an avocation than it is a hard vocational practice.
Well, cybersecurity is a huge part of what we do here at NPS. I'm just wondering what your viewpoint is on how we educate the future leaders of tomorrow.
But my sense is that it's really essential. I mean, NPS is perhaps one of the more advanced of the academies that we have, if that's the right term to use. But there are military academies of various kinds around the country that all, end up being critical in the officer training programs. NPS has a particular niche in that it's more of an advanced graduate kind of activity, but it's got a focus on military problems. And there aren't a lot of organizations in the country who have that as their primary focus. And they're tackling it with people who know the military well, not just people who are inclined to work on a military kind of problem because of the funding.
Well, Professor Kahn, thank you very much for joining us on Inside NPS, and thanks so much for all your unique contributions to the Internet. And thanks to you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this edition of Inside the Naval Postgraduate School. From Monterey, California, I'm your host, Alan Richmond. We'll see you next time.